toxic positivity. Is this something that you are familiar with? If you aren't, you will be by the end of this episode. I talked to my husband about toxic positivity a few weeks ago, and he was like, I don't think that's a real thing. And I said, oh, sir, it most definitely is a real thing. And it's a real thing we're going to dissect a little bit in today's episode. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Suzi Fevens.
So if you're not familiar with toxic positivity, basically it is when you pretend that everything is okay, even when it isn't. So, like you lose your job, but you try to stay positive and your friends say, you know what, something good's going to happen from this. And you'll be back on your feet before you know it if you just stay positive, or they tell you that things could be worse, you're better off than other people, and that basically if you're not grateful for all the blessings you still have, that you are a terrible person. And personally, I am firmly in the camp of when things suck, let yourself feel the suck. Okay, all of the toxic positivity stuff aside, and how it is unhelpful and hurtful, and sure, it could be worse. You know what? Anyone who is listening to this podcast, you definitely don't have it the worst of the worst person in the world, or the person who has it the worst in the world. That's what I'm trying to say, because that person isn't listening to podcasts. That person probably doesn't know that a podcast exists. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel like something that's happening in your life sucks, because it probably does. Everybody's life has a pile of suck in it. I kind of feel like I need to stop saying that. But my Downton Abbey fans, is there any Downton Abbey fans in the house? Cousin, Aunt Violet, whatever you want to call her, the Dowager, once said to Mary, I think, life is just a series of problems and then you die. And has anything more accurate ever been said? I'm not sure. And yeah, a lot of the problems that each of us has individually isn't the worst thing that could happen in the world. That doesn't mean that they don't stink. That doesn't mean that you're not allowed to wallow in self-pity now and again. That doesn't mean you have to walk around with a smile on your face 24/7 and pretend that things are better than they are. You're allowed to feel your emotions. In fact, you should feel your emotions. In fact, it is healthy for you to feel your emotions, good, bad, and sad. Because when you don't feel your emotions, when you just bottle those things up and you just stuff them down, they don't actually go anywhere. They just live in your body. And one day, they're going to bubble right back up. You're going to have to deal with them eventually. You have to deal with your emotions eventually. And you know what? Sometimes we do have to bottle them up. Sometimes we do have to push them down in order to survive whatever is happening in the moment. But sometimes we don't. And sometimes we feel like we have to because other people tell us, just stay positive. Just stay positive. You'll get another job. It might be in 3 years, long after unemployment has run out, and you're living on $100 a month. But you'll get one. No need to worry. You know what? Sometimes it's a good thing to worry. It's a good thing to feel anxious. It's a good thing to feel sad. It's a good thing to feel mad. What's not good is if you take those feelings out on other people, but we all occasionally do that. But you can be damn sure that if you just shut everything down, bottle it up, push it on down, that when it comes back, it's going to come back with a vengeance. Because it's almost like it's going into a condenser in there. Things getting condensed. When it comes back out, it's going to be even worse. But again, sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes things happen in your life that you literally, physically, emotionally, mentally are unable to deal with the emotion at the time, and you have to push it down. That's all the more reason not to push things down when you don't need to. And this is something that I think is becoming more and more common because you always see, especially those of you who like me are on social media, there's so many inspirational quotes and memes and things about being positive and having a positive mindset. And yes, a positive mindset is an important thing, but so is feeling your feelings. One thing I like to do when something happens and I'm really cranky about it is sometimes I just say, you know what? Today is my self-pity day. I'm just going to let myself wallow in self-pity today because whatever's going on, it sucks. It's not the end of the world, but I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to feel sorry for myself today. And then tomorrow I'm going to move on. And usually a day is all I need. Sometimes something more serious happens and you need a bit longer. Sometimes something happens and you can't deal with it at the time, so you push it down, but you got to know when you push it down, it's going to come back with a vengeance. Now, there's a flip side to toxic positivity, because toxic positivity more or less happens because you feel like you have to stay positive, and if you stay positive, then things are going to just turn out all sunshine and rainbows. But there's another part of this where people feel like they don't deserve to feel their feelings, because in their mind they know that there's people out there that have it worse, or they don't have anyone to talk to, so they feel like they don't deserve to have these emotions and they just push them down. That's kind of the opposite of toxic positivity, because you're not trying to replace your emotions with positivity, you're just trying to go numb to them. And you know what, that happens for good reasons as well. There's a lot of trauma related things that can cause you to go numb instead of feeling your feelings. But once again, those feelings are eventually going to come back, and they're going to come back in a time and a place where maybe you don't expect it and maybe you're not ready for it. So it's important, if you are someone who goes numb, doesn't allow yourself to feel your feelings, whether it's related to toxic positivity or not, if you don't let yourself feel the suck, yoga can be a really helpful tool, especially if you do a trauma-informed yoga class or program, because there is a specific series of sequencing that we can do called bottoms-up processing that allows you to start to feel your body. So when we talk about going numb, you're not just going numb to the emotion, but you're largely disengaging from the feelings in your body, the emotions in your body, or not the emotions, the feelings of your body when you experience emotions. That's what I'm trying to say. Because we all know when something has happened, we've gotten news and then we feel it in the pit of our stomach, or we feel like they have the weight of the world on our shoulders and things like that. So there's definitely a correlation between your emotions and feelings in your body, and people who tend to not allow themselves to feel their emotions go numb and just kind of disconnect their mind and their body in that way. So yoga can help you reconnect, and it can help you process through emotions without you actually having to verbally speak through them. You can just work through them physically, which is pretty profound and impactful, because sometimes things happen in our lives and we don't feel like we're ever going to be okay talking about them, but we still don't want to live with that trauma, with that emotion in our body. And so yoga is one way we can do that. And I have a few different tension release series that are really helpful for that, but that's a whole other topic. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be in a trauma-informed yoga class. Sometimes people have good releases in a regular class. Hopefully it's not because somebody has done something or said something triggering, but because you've done a lot of work through the psoas or through the hips. Those are areas where we tend to hold a lot of stored emotion. Sometimes people will just start laughing and they can't stop. Sometimes they'll start crying. Sometimes you'll just feel sad. All sorts of things come up, and the nice thing about it is your body only releases as much emotion as it knows that you can handle. So when you have things like that, it allows you to work through some of those things without having to talk about them. Anyway, it can be very helpful. But back on topic, that wasn't completely off topic, but back on topic, toxic positivity. You are allowed to have a positive mindset, be in general a positive person if that's who you are. Not everybody is. And you are allowed to have bad days. You're allowed to be cranky. You're allowed to be mad. You're allowed to be scared, excited. You're allowed to have all the feelings. You're allowed to feel all the feelings, and you don't have to apologize for it. You do not have to say, I know other people have it worse, but right now I just feel like being cranky. You're allowed to just be cranky. A 2-year-old having a temper tantrum is just being cranky. They don't say, I'm sorry. I know that the fact that you've just taken my doll away isn't the worst thing in the world, that other people have a lot worse, but I am just in my emotions right now. They just have their temper tantrum. As adults, generally we don't get to do that quite the same way, but you're allowed to feel your feelings. Be like a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, feel your feelings, maybe do it in a bit more an appropriate manner if possible. Don't have a meltdown at the grocery store unless it's warranted. But feel your feelings. Feel your feelings. You don't have to always stay positive. You don't have to know or explain that you realize that other people have it worse. You're allowed just to say, you know what? This was a shit thing that happened, and I'm going to allow myself to feel bad for myself for a little while. Sometimes people can make the mistake in thinking that yoga teachers, yoga participants, yogis, whatever, don't have negative emotions. No. Everybody's got negative emotions, but the goal is to stay connected with our emotions. Try not to let them take over, but let yourself feel them. Let yourself feel them. If you're having a crap day, have a crap day. And don't feel like you have to legitimize your bad day by saying, I know other people have it worse. Just let yourself have it. But if you're having one of those days where someone cuts you off first thing in the morning, and then you get a red light when you were hoping it was going to be green, don't use 2 or 3 inconveniences to write off your entire day. That's almost like toxic negativity. It's like the exact opposite of it is one little tiny thing goes wrong and you just let the whole day go off. However, people who have that probably have a lot of those built up, unfelt, undealt with emotions that are bubbling up whenever any little thing happens. Those people probably need those yoga practices even more. They need to work through some of that emotion, work through some of that trauma, work through some of that anger. Toxic positivity, toxic negativity. Listen, we've gone through the whole realm here. The gist of today's episode is you don't have to be positive all the time. You're allowed to be cranky. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to do so without having to say, I know that people have it a lot worse than me and I should be happy because I could have it a lot worse. Just feel your emotion. Emotion is just emotion. It does not mean that you think that you have the worst situation in the universe. It just means something's happened that you need to work through. And allow yourself that. That is it for today's episode. Let me know what you thought. Find me on Instagram at Suzi Confesses, and I will talk to you next week.